Hello, and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast on this relatively quiet, nothing much happening day here at Blizzard Watch, because it's not like Blizzard did anything. Oh, wait. Yeah, they did. Anyway, we're just going to jump right into it. My guest hosts are Joe Perez and Liz Harper.
We're guests now.
Yeah, you're guests. I don't know what's going on anymore. I'm going to be dead in 5 minutes. I'm going to age to death.
I demand the right to hospitality.
We were just talking in the pre-show about how Blizzard Watch is going to be 8 years old next year, which seems really old. I can't believe
Blizzard Watch is in second grade.
Hold on a second. Next year, at the time of this recording, less than 3 months.
That's going to be January. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, Blizzard Watch is officially in second grade. Okay, let's, with my fellow hosts, or perhaps ghosts, depending on how much longer this goes on.
That's true. That could be all of us.
Plus, next week is Halloween, and we're not going to be doing the show until the day after Halloween, so good to get the spookiness in now. We're all going to die. Anyway, let's talk about Dragonflight Prepatch Part 1. Which is what happened today. I say happened, but as far as I know, the actual World of Warcraft servers are not up yet.
As of the time of this recording, they are not up. They should. Supposedly, they're going to be up in about a half hour, but we'll see. Maintenance has already been extended by 3 hours this afternoon, so we'll see if it gets another extension.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not tremendously surprising to me that this one's a bit of a bear to get in, because, I mean, as there's a lot going on. We should probably start.
Well, before we do that, I just want to say, for any of the folks that are on those teams trying to get everything ready, I know some of them do listen to the show. I hope you are not pulling your hair out as much as I think you are, and I hope it goes smoothly, and I hope everything comes back up as good and smooth as possible. Yep,
we would hope it is like Jif. Just let it be Jif peanut butter, just nice and smooth and creamy. But regardless. The first thing I'm going to mention is the talent system, because I feel like you have to mention the new talent system is going live with this patch. I feel like it's a mixed bag, quite frankly. I feel like some classes didn't get a lot of, I don't know what to call it. I don't want to say it didn't get a lot of focus, didn't get a lot of attention, didn't get a lot of meaningful change. I'm not sure. Like, one that keep hearing is like Guardian Druids don't feel like they're in a good place.
And the thing is, Guardian Druids never got a single forum post in response to their feedback or about changes to the class. They never got anything. They got literally nothing.
And part of that, I guess, is, I don't want to say expected, but also, well, I guess kind of. Like, we understood that some things were going to fall to the wayside because of the time constraint, right? Like, November 28th is not that far away. The fact that they're releasing the expansion this year at all, when we first announced it, or when we talked about the announcement, blew my damn mind, right? Because, like, that's so fast. And we kind of saw that. Like, the beta cycle was pretty quick. Some classes got a ton of attention. Some classes didn't. Maybe it was under the assumption or the auspice that those classes were in an okay space because they were in Shadowlands. And that they could come back to it later, or maybe they just ran out of time. We don't know. But yeah, there's some classes are just hurting. Like, Liz, how are paladins?
I'm gonna see when the servers go up. I know that my counterpart Liz said they have nerfed Ret into the ground, which Ghost Trawler's still with us on that one. And
he still promised me a pony.
He gave you a pony. The pony he gave you was paladins. You get to ride them into the ground. See what you're saying.
I mean, we eventually got a moose. That totally counts. Maybe. I mean, I'm feeling optimistic, but I just don't know. I don't know. I did do last week. I sat down and I checked the forums, and so this is like week-old data. And I checked, like, okay, the number of posts versus the number of responses and feedback from Blue Post. And Paladins was slightly over 2,000 feedback posts and 8 blue posts. Druids was a little worse with 2,100 posts and 8 blue posts and no post about Guardians. And then you have someone like, let's see, what was you had Warriors, which were just under 400 posts and also got 8 blue posts. And it's like the levels of which Blizzard is responding to feedback are all over the place. For example, Hunters had 1,300 posts and 22 blue posts when I checked on this. And just the level of responsiveness from Blizzard on different classes has been all over the place. And when you don't get a lot of responses, you don't get a lot of feedback. You don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think part of that also might be to like over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of turnover too, right? Like a lot of the folks we know that maybe play those classes or maybe would have had some insight or maybe would have poked and prodded aren't there anymore. So maybe there's an element of that as well, where some of the classes that those folks knew to take a look at got a little more attention. I don't know. I'm spitballing. We actually, I mean, I want to make it clear. I have no idea what actually happened there, but yeah.
I'm just thinking it's because Warriors are better. We need to get more people looking at them.
That could be. That could be.
But it is interesting to see. Like one of the things I noticed recently when logging in on the beta, which is what if you're watching us live streaming, that's the beta. That's not live. One of the things I noticed is that when you log in, you will have your talents all spent already.
And one of the default builds, right?
Build. Yeah, you will have a default build.
Yeah.
This character is arms, and this character had a build. I did not do this build. It just was on him when he got online. I'm going to redo it because it is not what I want, but it's serviceable. It works. I went and killed some stuff with it. And that means that if you are a very casual player or somebody who just doesn't really know what's going on with the talents yet, you won't have to sit down and spend a half hour designing your talent spec before you go do anything. You can go out and play with it and see what it does. And then you can play around with the talents. I think that's interesting that they've made a lot of steps. One of the things that really surprised me is that you can share your talent build with other people and they can just use it. This is me bringing up some stuff I think is positive because I don't always want to sound like we're just, ragging on Blizzard for stuff. And I think that a lot of the stuff they've done around the talent system has been really good. I think the way that they've set up the shareable talents so that, like, if you happen to have a good build and your friend is like, hey, I need a tank build, what do you recommend? Instead of going, oh, try this and this and this and this, you can literally just send him a link to your spec and he can just apply it. And now he has your tanking build.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really one of the better things they've added.
It's another step in the, like, what's already been a natural progression, right? Like we've seen the ability to link items in chat and, be able to share transmogs in chat and be able to pin locations and share pin locations in chat, share coordinates in chat, things like that have been progressively making it a little more MMO-y, massive multiplayer, like acknowledging the fact that sharing data between players is anything you can do to enable that is a good thing. And talent specs were already getting swapped around. I mean, hell, as a website, we did that for how many years? Use this build. Here's a link to the talent tree calculator. Here's what you need to do and stuff like that. And people have been doing that forever. It just makes sense to have it be something that's shareable in game, especially if you're going to do a revamp of the whole system. It's a fantastic quality of life improvement.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into the UI changes in general, which is one of those things where the more I think about the UI changes, the more I'm almost overwhelmed by them. Like, there's a lot between stuff that they added in for accessibility, like various colorblind modes and various ways to change or alter the way the game presents information, and just straight up UI changes in general, like being able to move character things, being able to design basically how your UI looks. There is a ton of this. I think there's more of this than I think people realize. And in a way, it's sort of the unsung, the mountain beneath the surface of the water, like an iceberg. There's an iceberg of these changes between the accessibility and the UI changes that really do alter the way the game can be. Just the gamepad thing, where you can have a little pad just appear on the screen, and you can just click on that pad, or you can have an actual gamepad hooked up to it and play that way. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different stuff there. I'm going to just go with you guys, and I'll ask Liz first. Is there anything you've seen in the UI or accessibility changes that you immediately was like, this is a great idea?
Well, just UE in general. I am really excited to be able to do things and customize things without downloading, 27 add-ons, because that is always a headache, and keeping up with add-ons and customization settings, and then the add-on breaks and you have to start over or you switch to a new add-on. And having this built in, just by having it built in, makes the game much more accessible, because everyone who logs into the game is going to have this. Casual players are going to have this. Players who only log onto the expansion when it's first released and they play through the content and then they leave and don't necessarily keep up with add-ons through an entire expansion. This brings really useful gameplay features to everyone and kind of evens that playing field to where more casual players can have similar experiences to people who play all the time, week after week.
Yeah, I wanted to point out we have an article by Liz Pat, also known as the Liz of Earth 2. She basically points out that there's some add-ons you might not even need anymore. You might still want them for whatever reason. You might think that they still provide you with functionality you want, but UI mods like Bartender and the BTW loadout spec management one might not really even be useful, because there's so many different ways to handle that sort of thing now. And like, I used ElvUI for years. The ElvUI, Tuck UI, various full UI replacements. I think the UI editor at this point can probably do anything they do. Pretty close to it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that's missing is Bartender's fade out bars. Like, you can have them disappear in combat, but you can't have them faded like a ghost effect with like limited opacity. I think that's really the only major difference that I know of.
Yeah, but there are still plenty of add-ons. Oh, go ahead, Liz. Sorry.
Some of these add-ons you may want because they offer more customization than the default interface offers, even now. But yeah, basically what Joe says.
That's the thing. Liz also mentioned various things like Auctionator, Handy Notes, Leatrix Plus, Titan Panel, which are all really good for adding stuff to the game. I think that they'll basically still be useful. Auctionator, I can't imagine Auctionator not still be useful until Blizzard finally just sits down and completely revamps the age again to actually have those features. And I don't think they're going to anytime soon. But like TomTom, I use TomTom a lot.
We got a pretty good auction house revamp. What was it? Expansion ago?
Yeah, but I don't think they're gonna add in Auctionator type.
Not all of those tools. Yeah. No,
it's just they gave you enough to use it. I don't think they're going to go through the elements that people who are like professionally running the auction house, not professionally, but you know what I'm talking about. There are people for whom the auction house is their game.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, and also there's also mods that are always going to be ones you're going to be looking at, like Deadly Boss mods. That hasn't changed at all. You still want Deadly Boss mods.
Or Bigwigs.
GTFO would be pretty useful. Or Bigwigs. I don't know. I haven't used Bigwigs in a little bit, but I still use Deadly Boss. But there's just various, there's add-ons that are still useful. There's add-ons that might not be useful anymore, and there's add-ons that will be useful if you want to go beyond a certain. And I think that what was the one she listed here that I immediately thought of? Bagnon, which was a one-bag add-on a lot of people used to use. But there's now an in-game combined backpack option. You can just tell the game to do that with your bags anyway. So Bagnon probably, for that purpose, won't be used. But there were other things about Bagnon that I liked.
Being able to see your bank, being able to see your alts.
Yeah, and I do think there's weak auras. I don't think weak auras is going anywhere. I think weak auras it's too useful as a wake up, do this thing now, that I don't think we're going to see it go. But in general, we have seen a lot of change to the UI and to all that. And it's a big deal to get this much of an update to that. In addition, they've made mages, priests, and
rogues.
I think that's it, because there's only there's no other class that might work here. Not one that can sense or understand is there. Yeah, no, it's rogues. Joe. I was going to do
perhaps if we discussed plans beforehand to tell jokes, I wouldn't ruin it. I'm sorry. I feel bad now.
No, you still would.
I'm gonna go cry now. No,
please don't. But yes, mages, priests, and rogues. Now you can play them as anybody. Hooves are no longer a detriment to being sneaky, which if you've ever actually lived around animals, especially animals with hooves, you understand that, yeah, that thing can be sneaky. It doesn't make any sense that a cow can sneak up on you, but it can. So yeah, I'm happy for people who want to play those classes, but don't like that they can't play them in the race they want to play. I think that should in fact be just universal for everything. At this point, I feel like if you want to be like a blood elf druid, just let it happen. But that's always been my argument. So I'm not surprised Blizzard hasn't gone that far yet. I still do think it's good that we're going to get, like, for instance, Tauren and Draenei rogues finally. Trying to think of who else couldn't be a rogue. Was there anybody else who couldn't be a rogue at this point? I mean, obviously Drakthir can't, but
I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't played a rogue in a long, long time.
Same.
Pretty much everybody else could be a rogue. But if I'm wrong, if you're thinking of a race right now that couldn't be rogues, please let us know. I'm sure that I will be happy to mention them, because I'm the one who came up with the question and asked you to do it. So, whatever. But anything else, like from the this patch, anything else that jumps out at you guys before I start going on about some other stuff? Like anything else that immediately when you think of this patch?
This is just the setup patch, right? So like this is part 1, and players, I know we've got asked a bunch of times about this, and whether or not when those servers go up, if you're going to be able to go in, do the new content, if invasions with the elementals are going to be there or anything like that. None of that's in part 1. That's all coming in part 2.
That's correct. Yes.
So something just to keep in mind there. But otherwise, I mean, it's time to learn and experiment, right? Like that's the whole purpose of why it's broken up into 2 parts, because this is just going to be a big change for so many players. I'm looking forward to getting in. I know our guild is planning on doing some faded raids to get Jellycats for folks that missed out on them, and also to kind of give us a chance to run through our talents to make sure they work. And I'm kind of looking forward to that, to see how things work out. So we're going to see how that goes.
Liz?
Well, here's one thing. The barbershop is going to be free. You can make
that's right.
however many hairstyle changes, hair color changes, eye colors, like all of that, free. And while I am excited about that, the only thing it makes me think of is, do transmog, you cowards. Come on.
Yeah, the amount of gold I have spent on transmog is kind of terrifying.
That's probably why I'm perpetually broke in the game, because, it's like you put on a transmog look and it's like 400 gold. And then you're like, no, I don't really like that. I'm going to do something else. And then it's like, yeah, before you know it, you've spent 10,000 gold switching between transmogs. And
it doesn't help.
I spend more of my money on transmog than I do anything else. And I've been gold capped a few times.
So yeah, I agree that transmog should be free. I think we should probably mention, I think we mentioned it previously, but we should probably mention it again. The tier sets and legendaries are changing in the pre-patch. So if you have your current Sepulchre of the First One's tier, and you've been relying on it because it is very powerful, it doesn't work any, period. It's gone legacy. If you're wearing those pieces, their stats are still good, but they no longer give you the set bonuses they once did.
Mm-hmm.
Very sad. Very sad.
I understand why they did it, because as they pointed out, a lot of these the things on the set didn't work anymore. Like the talents didn't exist, or they worked in different ways, and it just there was no way to balance it all in the amount of time they had. And I get that.
And
but I also... Go ahead.
Like, it doesn't feel like it's worth spending the time to balance this for like 4 weeks when they could be working on Dragonflight,
Yeah, exactly.
It's
one of those things that it would have been nice if they'd done it, if Guardian Druids might have liked the Guardians. But I will mention that the legendaries from Shadowlands are not going to stop working, but they no longer work in zones other than Shadowlands.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, if you've been using them to farm old content, you won't have their powers anymore. So if you take in a legendary that gives you, say, the one that I keep thinking of is the Tormented Kings one. That's an actual ability that warriors have now. But you can double up on it if you have the ring. You can wear the ring, and in Shadowlands zones, you'll still get to double up and get it twice. You can use it more often. You can't do that anywhere else. Like, you can't go into, say, Black Temple and use that legendary. You'll still get the stats from it, but again, it won't work otherwise. And it's not going to work in any of the Dragonflight zones. It doesn't work in Stormwind or Orgrimmar. It doesn't work anywhere but in Shadowlands zones. So I was expecting that, quite frankly, because otherwise people were going to be using the legendaries forever. And even so, the item level on the legendaries, if you've gotten it all the way up, means that you probably will still use it forever because it will still give you stats. Like you will be close to 70 before you replace a fully leveled Shadowlands legendary, just for the stats. So I feel like these changes were expected to some degree. I didn't expect the legacy change to tier. Usually they do that like an expansion down the road.
Yeah.
You don't usually get rid of the tier set bonuses. And I think it's telling that they did it this time because I do believe that when they say they couldn't balance it. Because they left previous set bonuses for a while and only got rid of them. Some of them they only got rid of because of time walking. Because people were actually wearing the set pieces again for time walking, which in my opinion wasn't a problem, quite frankly. It kind of bugged me. But regardless, yeah. What do you guys feel about the legacy changes? You think they should have tried to make it work or what?
I don't think it's a project worth the time. As managing Blizzard Watch, I often, look at things and it's like, okay, I want to write this and write this and write this and write this, and we should have this and this and this. But it's like you got to focus on the things that are most important because time and staff are not infinite. So you focus on getting the things done that really matter. And I don't think this matters a whole lot. It's not going to matter for long. It's going to be really frustrating for a few weeks, and then it's not going to matter at all. So it sucks, but this is probably the best idea for them.
Joe?
I agree. Like, I don't really have much of a deviation to say there. I think there are other things that require more attention. And as our goblins are so kind to remind us, time is money, friend.
Okay. I should probably at this point move on to mention that the original Jailer Ahead of the Curve mount, that you can't get Jailer Ahead of the Curve anymore as of today, but you can still get the mount. I believe go ahead.
I think Ahead of the Curve went away a little while ago with season 4. Yeah, so that's
when season 4 ended, that went away.
Or when season 4 started.
Or yeah,
we're still in season 4. Yeah.
But even though that's gone, you can still get the mount, which is pretty cool because usually they've just gone, or they make it like in some cases they make the mount like a 1% drop off of somebody.
I believe that's what it'll probably go to when Dragonflight launches, but for now you can.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool.
And it's a really cool mount. You should go get it if you can. Go check out.
Isn't it like a little mini Halandris?
Yes, it is. It's a mini Halandris. So go look at Perky Pugs and their friendship crab runs, and get yourself a Jailer mount.
Yeah, they're I love the fact that they are just like defy all physics and common sense. They are one of my favorite mounts because of this.
Alrighty. A non-World of Warcraft thing to talk about. Basically, Overwatch 2 is doing its Halloween event. I believe it's called Halloween Terror 2022.
Yeah.
And it's the Bride of Junkenstein event, so you can head in there and get a feel for how things are supposed to be playing out for the eventual Overwatch 2 PvE stuff. Liz has a note here that I'm going to read in its entirety, in which you get to spend 20-ish on new skins rather than earning loot boxes by participating in the event for the chance at skins. I can't tell based on that if you think this is good or bad. So I'm going to ask you, Liz, is it good or bad that you can just buy the thing?
Okay, I should note I have not been playing Overwatch 2. It just does not really excite me except for the PvE aspect, which doesn't exist yet. But I have been reading things people have been saying about this and keeping up with the news, and it's like, okay, you used to be able to play the game and earn the loot boxes, and you'd open the loot boxes and you get stuff. And now it's like you play the game and you earn small cosmetics.
Don't forget you earn the coin, too, that you could then purchase skins during the holiday with as well.
Yeah. But now it's like you can earn some small things through gameplay, like sprays and things like that. But like the big, exciting skins that they're advertising, they cost like $15 to $20 real money. And that's like, okay, that's just not very... That's really discouraging. I mean, having to go through all of the loot boxes was discouraging, but like going in and saying, okay, well, if you want this, you got to give us $20. That's a whole new and exciting kind of discouraging.
Well, I mean, I guess there's a counterpoint to that, though, right? Like looking at other free-to-play games and looking at other games, like we can compare it to Riot, right? Like when you look at League of Legends is free-to-play. Some of the skins cost between $10 and $20, depending on the level of skin or how, depending on the character, how new the skin is or what it entails. So it's not an abnormal price for that type of game. So, I mean, while it sounds like a lot and it is expensive, it's in line with other games that already do that. The other thing is it allows people who can purchase it directly, which is something that I know a lot of players were asking for, regardless of how we feel about it. It is something that a lot of people ask. And matter of fact, if you play any of the free-to-play games now, you will sometimes occasionally get hit up with a survey to kind of like do their like, how do you feel we're doing? What's new? And things like that. And one of the most commonly asked questions on those surveys is, do you want to earn cosmetics through events, or would you rather be able to purchase them directly? So I think there is maybe some data there as well. It's not for me personally. Like, I wouldn't do that unless I was like super hardcore into a character on a game, but like it's in line with what the rest of that sort of those games are doing, right? Like almost all of them are right in that ballpark. So just some data, I guess.
Yeah, it certainly feels like if you want to get skins on the same level you were before, you were going to spend a lot of money, even though you can, yes,
for sure.
You directly target the skins you want, and it's like Overwatch is free to play, but you're gonna actually pay more for it than you did when you just bought Overwatch. So I find that whole trend in gaming kind of discouraging, that it's like, oh, everything is free in quotation marks, but you're gonna pay more for it. It's just not fun, and it's just the way things have to go, because things cost money, development costs money, and you can't just have a single purchase box price and still support ongoing development.
Yeah,
I mean, is that true? I mean, and I don't think we have time to really get into a discussion of it, but it is an interesting thing to consider. Maybe it's not that you can't have a box price and support ongoing development so much as you can't have a box price people will accept and support ongoing development.
So, unpopular opinion, I think there is something to it. I just don't think we found the balance point, because I think Liz is more right than that. Ongoing development on a game that is supposed to be prolonged and is supposed to be continued to be developed, that's where it becomes a problem, right? Like, even WoW, we pay a subscription fee per month on top of whatever we purchase for the expansions, right? And that money goes towards continued development of the game. If you buy a game like Overwatch, traditionally, like the box price, if it's $60, that's what, 4 months of WoW subscription, right? Maybe. And is that enough to keep the game going? Especially, when did Overwatch come out? It's been Overwatch 1. It's been 5 years.
It's a while.
Easily 5 years, if not more.
Okay. So like there is something to that, right? Because there is no subscription base for it. 2016, good Lord. So like there is an element of that, and it is an element of justifying continued production on it. I'm not saying I like it, but it is something that is at the forefront of games in this particular niche, right? So plus the more cynical side of it is they will always make more profit off of that as well, because that's just the nature of that beast as well.
Yeah, I am of the opinion I would rather pay a subscription fee than have a ton of microtransactions, because a subscription fee is upfront. You know what you're paying, you know what you're getting, or at least you have a good idea of what you're getting. And it's like something you can plan on and budget for. It's something that you can realistically.
Well, have you heard about this thing?
Pass.
I was going to say, have you heard about this thing called the Battle Pass?
Yeah. Battle Pass. Yes, Battle Passes, but the problem with a Battle Pass compared to a subscription system is you're paying for something, and then you still have to unlock it, which of course,
when you pay a sub fee, you get access to everything in the game, right? But you have to actually go and do it. You don't just.
You still have to go and farm the transmog.
Yeah. So I don't know. It is.
I love how that's the unit of measurement. I love you, Liz. Never change.
Yeah. It's transmog. Transmog is the game. That's the whole game. That's why I do anything in the game. There's no other reason. Yeah. But so here's the difference between a battle pass and like a subscription like WoW, is that when the battle pass is done, I can't get the things on the battle pass anymore. So if there's 100 levels and I get through half of them, the things on the other half are now gone. Even though I paid for the battle pass, I can't get them because I didn't spend enough time in the game to earn them quickly.
You're basically paying someone to let you do chores versus paying someone to let you go grab apples off of their farm, but take the apples home. There is a difference.
There is a difference, absolutely. But there's also the potential battle pass, and this is not a defensive battle pass. I have very complicated feelings about that in general. But depending on how much the price point is for a battle pass, and I'll use Fortnite as an example, right? The new battle pass is way different than the old battle pass. But like it's roughly the equivalent of like $15 for a 3-month pass or 2-month pass, whatever the chapter of the season is. And the thing that they do is after that battle pass is done, those skins aren't gone forever. Those cosmetics aren't gone forever. They rotate them back in for like direct purchasing with V-Bucks or whatever the case is. So some battle passes take that into account. I'm not saying that I'm a big fan of it, but I'm just saying some of them are considering that,
Overwatch has said that they'll be doing that.
But they also haven't told us what the time frame is either, or what the cost will be.
That's true.
Right.
We know that the battle pass season is 9 weeks.
Sure.
But we don't know how they'll be getting us stuff that goes away because the battle passes. And they put, in addition to cosmetics being up for money, there's like characters who are straight up behind the battle pass. And yes, the first new one was pretty easy to get. Kiriko wasn't hard to get this time around. But season 2, you're going to have to get that character. And I think it's like a solid 2/3 of the way through the battle pass before you get it.
I think somebody calculated that if you buy the boost, it's like $200 US or something like that.
Yeah. So there's a lot to talk about in this one. And I think more than we've got really time to, but definitely something to keep in mind in the future is how Overwatch is handling the transition to free to play, how it's using battle passes. I honestly feel like something more like what other single target games do with their season passes would have been a better move. But regardless, we're here now. So I'm going to move on to mentioning this because it happened today and we didn't really get much chance to read about it. And I'm sure we'll be talking about it on Lore Watch at some point. But the Dragonflight Legacies Chapter 1 went out today. It's Nosdormu. And yes, it's not Martin Sheen doing his voice anymore. I don't think anyone's surprised by this. Martin Sheen is like 81 years old and has been talking about retiring for the past decade. Plus, it's Nosdormu and Emberthal, who is one of the new Drakthir. And it's a Galakrond recap, as was pointed out here. It's an interesting one, but I kind of felt like compared to some of the ones we got in previous expansions, it was a little, I don't want to sound mean, but this really isn't up to their usual standard for these things.
I mean, my initial rating was like a 3 out of 10. This was not, but then I saw a lot of people responding really positively to it.
I think like a 3 would imply that it's bad. And I don't think it's bad. I just feel like it's not as powerful as like the one that always comes to mind are the ones from Battle for Azeroth.
Oh yeah, those were amazing.
It's the Jaina one or the Sylvanas one were both very powerful. And then the Ashara one came in and was like,
wow.
Boom.
Yeah, this is
wow.
This is a popcorn flick, right? This is not like Citizen Kane. This is also not Killer Clowns from Outer Space. This is just a fun thing to sit down and sort of get that recap. But here's the thing. I think it's intentionally sort of in the position it's in because it's recapping Galakrond. How many players don't know who Galakrond is?
Most.
I mean, I know who Galakrond is because he was in a Hearthstone expansion,
right?
And Revamp had a song about him.
But how many players came in after Wrath, right? And I never played that content and don't understand who it is. This is sort of I liken it to like rehashing a series or a movie series from a long time ago, where sometimes the first, like we could say Star Wars, a lot of it tends to be like a reprimer for people that are coming into it for the first time, right? It's not an in-depth lore dump. It's not a masterpiece theater sitting on in the armchair by the fireplace reading from the giant tome. Although, if you want to do that, that's not a bad idea either. But like, it's just here's Galakrond, here's why it's important, here's where the Dragonflight is tied up with it, and this is probably going to be relevant as you make your way through Dragonflight. Go, right? So that's my take on it, at least.
I feel like my expectations were wrong. And because my expectations were wrong, I was really disappointed in it. Which, again, it's not that it's bad, but it was a recap. And a lot of the previous shorts we've seen have been really hard-hitting character stories. They've been very emotional. They've been highly character-driven. Think of... oh, God, I've completely forgotten his name, the Ardenweald short.
Ursoc.
Oh, right,
And
yeah.
yeah, Ursoc, and you're like watching this and you're breaking down in tears because this is just this rips at your heart. Are the Jaina short, which was incredible, full of emotion, very powerful. And you compare this to that, and this is a story recap.
So
even if
Going all the
you
way back to Warlords of Draenor, the ones they did for Warlords of Draenor, like the one for Grom, or the one for not Grom, sorry, Fist guy, no hand boy. I can't remember his name.
Kargroth.
Yes, thank you. Kargath Blade Fist. Sorry. His one is actually really powerful. Like it's you get a lot of his personality. The one that they did for Murad is just like soul destroying to watch. Like how he he thought he was doing the right thing, and then he turned out that he'd let his people down and they'd all died because he ran off to fight instead of staying to protect. And it's just, there's a lot. For that matter, the Ashara one, which I mentioned earlier, is a recap. Like,
but it's
a recap that shows you new information and also gives you some perspective on the POV, not just of Ashara, but of N'Zoth. I didn't get anybody's POV from the Nosdormu one. I didn't get Nosdormu's, and he's in it. Like he show him and the 5 original Drakes who became the Aspects, and he manages to not even there's just not a lot there. And I was I don't feel like it was 3 out of 10. I feel like it was a solid 6. Just because it's still well produced.
Oh yeah, they're all very well produced.
I also think timing is important too. I don't want to like beat a dead dragon or anything here.
Why not? They keep trying to.
That's all. That was the joke, Matt. That I'm done. See, you did it to me. Now we're even.
I can do it back.
Yeah. Also, like the Jaina short, the Sylvanas short, and the Ursoc short, when they were telling powerful stories, those characters were very present in recent gameplay and important moments, right? The dragons have sort of been on the like quiet side for 2 expansions now? 2.5, really? So like I can understand maybe starting with something like this. I will be interested to see what the other chapters look like after this, and if they start to give that perspective. Because, again, like it really does feel like hey, so you want to learn about dragon aspects? Well, press 5 on your keyboard, pilgrim. Like, that's what it feels like to me. So,
I mean, it feels like
I
like
want that button. I wanted to
keep
talk
going
just like that.
Matt was talking about the Ashara and N'Zoth short, which we did know that story. We knew the basic story, but it's like you do the basic story and then you have this scene from Ashara's perspective where she's sinking with her city underwater, and then N'Zoth shows up and they have this whole conversation and she's like, I'm a queen. And just, it's like Matt said, this is a new perspective, and it's by putting yourself in the role of this character, giving you this personal moment with this character, you have this powerful kind of emotional response, and there's new information there. You get this new perspective and a different understanding of the event. And like, I could see how this short could have done that. Like, if you'd really put people into the role of these dragons and this desperate fight against Galakrond, this fight that they had no reason to win. These are like tiny proto-drakes compared to the giant monster that was Galakrond. I mean, there was no reason they should have won that fight. And they did. That's like, it's this incredible heroic moment, except you just have Nosdormu telling you the story of it, and you don't get that kind of personal moment of like determination. We are going to work together and take out this threat. So I think that's where it failed for me. And it could just be I have the wrong expectations. Because I went in wanting something like that, and it wasn't something like that.
I'm totally fair, right? Like, and I think part of that is like sort of the Ouroboros of the cinematic team eating their own tail a little bit, because they've been doing such a killer emotional job with their delivery, especially
Oh yeah.
all of the shorts and cinematics that we got from, I mean, really the last 2 expansions. They've just been on a whole other level.
Honestly, I go back all the way to Mists of Pandaria.
Yeah, you know what? I'll agree. I'll agree.
The Xiao one started this kind of this visual novel storytelling thing. The ones for Warlords were all spectacular. Even if you don't care about Warlords, Legion had great ones. The Illidan one stand out, but the Gul'dan one, you if people didn't know Gul'dan was evil for some reason, if they'd missed the memo, or just he wasn't a character they knew about that much, that cinematic is like, he's not just evil, he's this evil. And you're like,
he's evil.
Okay. Yeah, he's baby mustache eating, twirling, whatever. I don't know. He's bad. Yeah. And from there, like each one after, like Battle for Azeroth, we've spent a time talking about, but even the Shadowlands ones, the one with Uther is like, what?
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what? And then you see the one with Ursoc and that little Fae looking fella. And it's like, the Winter Queen shows up and you're like, how can you do this? How can you be a monster like this? And she's like, it's this or everything. And, you finally understand this is what we're talking about with Anima Drought. It's not just, there's no magic here. It's everything is dying in the land of the dead, which is already, it's a hard concept, but it gets across. So yeah, I feel like this one, we'll see what comes next. I am interested in seeing what comes next and what they're setting up here. But on its own, by itself, it is not, in my opinion, one of their stronger efforts. But it's certainly not bad. I don't think that there's any way to say that this team puts together the amount of time and effort they obviously put into it, that it's bad. That just doesn't work for me. But
this
I think
might
we're gonna
also
move on.
be.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
This might also be part, of a larger whole, and that we'll see it in a larger context when more of them roll out, and it'll be a better fit as a coherent whole, when previously they've been a little more episodic the last couple of expansions.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Because one thing, a lot of Dragon lore is stuff we haven't really seen since Cataclysm.
Yep. It's been a while.
In a way, you kind of have to take the 11-year gap and say, okay, let's explain some of this stuff to people so they know what's going on with these dragons and why it's important. So, but I think at this point, I'm going to actually say, let's go and talk about this post, because I think your guys' feedback on this concept is going to be worthwhile. We did a post this week about whether or not we're going to get Cataclysm Classic. And my take on it was simple. Yes, it's almost a guarantee at this point that we are going to get Cataclysm Classic. And the reason for that is because WoW Classic is ridiculously popular. It is something that is beloved by a big chunk of the player base. And since it is so beloved, Blizzard would obviously want to keep it going. But the problem with doing Cataclysm Classic is Cataclysm is the expansion that Classic is essentially a refutation of. Everything that Cataclysm did is stuff that original WoW Classic gives you the chance to undo. It's like, here's the world the way it used to be. So I do find it like there's a ways I can think of that you could do it, but I do think it is a really weird idea to get your head around. What do you guys think about the likelihood and how to do it for Cataclysm Classic? Whichever one of you wants to go first, go.
I was waiting for Joe to talk because I feel like I just start talking and then I keep talking forever.
I mean, I think we all feel like that, yeah.
I think Matt is completely right. They have to, because Classic players are hungry for content and they devour content way faster than retail players. They devour content faster than we did it originally. They are starving for new content all the time. So yeah, you've got to feed the content monster. And Cataclysm is going to be the most straightforward way to do it, but you're going to have to make changes that make it feel like Classic, that get that Classic feel that they all want.
I don't know that I agree with that. Mm-hmm. So I think that Classic is a different beast from when it first started, right? So when we first started, when it was releasing, there was a lot of it's preserving the world, it's taking the world back to where it was before Cataclysm. It's undoing a lot of the changes, and we're trying to recapture that feel of it. But it's evolved past that at this point, I think, and it's becoming more like Diablo 2 remastered is almost, where it's almost like a divergent timeline of development at this point. So I think that it is an inevitability that we will get access to a Cataclysm classic or a redo of Cataclysm with the sensibilities of what's learned today and with today's design scope in mind. I don't know the best way to do it aside from making sure that it's optional, right?
Yeah.
Because I think that's sort of the key. Now, the interesting question that it poses for me is not necessarily if Cataclysm Classic or whatever they want to call it, Cataclassic comes out. It's what's going to happen with, at a point that I agree with Liz on, is that Classic players are devouring content at a lightning speed pace. What happens when Classic catches up to retail? Where's the line that says we're done developing classics and it's now caught up to a point, because we know the development on retail takes time. Shadowlands came out, 2 years ago? Almost at this point?
It was sometime in the before time. It actually came out, I know it came out in 2020 because for most of 2020 we were still in Battle for Azeroth. Yeah.
So then we have, and Battle for Azeroth lasted for a while, and we have sort of like a 2-ish year cycle for expansions. Classic doesn't seem to be following the 2-year sort of pattern, because it seems like they're pushing out quicker. So what do we start doing?
It'll be close to exactly 2 years when Dragonflight goes out, because it was November 23rd.
There you go. So my question is, what happens when it catches up with retail? That's the thing that I don't know, right? Like, does it become a completely divergent product? Does it follow the EverQuest problem, where you have alternate reality creations instead of following the storyline?
Let me jump in here really quick. Classic was originally rolled out August 26, 2019. And Burning Crusade Classic was June 1st, 2021. Though they certainly sped up Wrath, which was Wrath was about a year.
Yeah, I think that the reason that it took Burning Crusade that much time to come out was because they were trying to navigate what they were going to do with players who didn't want to go to Burning Crusade. And it feels like they've worked that out. Like, they didn't give you a choice this time.
6K is referring to it as two ships of Theseus, and I think that is accurate.
Well, yeah, it's literally like that. Do you ever hear that joke about the one guy who's like, my boss said he wanted to rebuild the ship, so I took every piece of wood and then built my own version of the ship at home. And then one day I showed it to him, and it was all the original pieces of the ship, so that's obviously your ship, right? It is kind of like that. It is actually very interesting to think about it in those terms. But it's also, I think it was Liz who pointed this out. When they went to some changes, the changes started getting bigger.
Yeah.
Like, original WoW Classic, they were very reluctant to do anything. But then they finally, at the end, before they put out Burning Crusade Classic, they put out that thing that would allow you to keep buffs, and you didn't have to run in, get the buff, and immediately get yourself to the raid. You could just put the buffs on hold until you were ready to use them. And from there, that's when the changes started accumulating. So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying it's getting closer to Diablo 2 remastered, right?
I think in the post, one of the things I said was that in a way, by now, Wrath Classic is like a what if. I think I even used the term. It's like, what if? What if they did development different on Wrath Classic? Like, what if there's not as many, you don't have to squish the item gear as much later because you squish it right here? And what if Ulduar lasts longer? And what if they put in a new 5-man difficulty called Heroic Plus?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be the key to when they do a Cataclysm Classic is we're not going to get, I'm positive if they do it, there will not be a raid finder. They will not put that in at the end. They just won't do it. And they won't put in the dungeon finder. So you're going to basically be trying to get these groups to happen organically like you do now in Wrath Classic with just regular 5-mans. You just put them together the old way with trade chat and so forth. Are they going to keep Heroic Plus dungeons? Are they going to keep having raids like making them last longer and be more give them more room to breathe? Because some raids still the first raids in Cataclysm were gone. The second Firelands came out, they were gone, and that's not something we went from 3 raids to start to Firelands to Dragon Soul. Are they going to maybe space out those first 3 raids so that they're not all boom right away? Because Wrath has a whole extra tier of raiding in it that Cataclysm doesn't have. There are a lot of things to think about in terms of this, but I do think that they're going to do it. And I don't think they're going to worry about, what happens when we catch up to Modern, because I think at a certain point, they'll actually start doing specific expansion servers. I honestly think that's going to have to be the case for Shadowlands. I don't know what you guys think.
I would be surprised if we don't get expansion specific servers. I think I called that out way long ago when Classic WoW was first announced. And somebody asked us a question about, what about the other ones? I would be very surprised if we're not rapidly approaching a point where that becomes a thing, where it's just individual servers for individual expansions.
However, as a counterpoint, Liz, you mentioned something when you edited the post that I kicked myself for not having remembered. Seasons of Mastery throw an interesting change into this.
Yeah.
Because you could theoretically, instead of hammering out expansions as fast as possible, you could really go for the Season of Mastery concept that they haven't done much with since they initially did it. Why don't you outline what you suggested? Because I think it's good stuff to talk about.
I mean, yeah, we could do a Seasons of Mastery thing. And the first Seasons of Mastery they did was all of the vanilla WoW content compressed into a year's release schedule, which still, for how fast people gobble up classic content, was kind of too slow. But it was kind of an experiment, and they could keep doing that. I mean, we can look at Diablo 3, which was released in 2012. That's been a couple of years, 1 or 2. And it's the same game. It's the same game it always was, but people still play it. People are still super excited about it. And why is that? It's because they have seasons now. You get a new season every 3 months, and it adds new tweaks to gameplay. It adds new mechanics. It adds all sorts of things, and it makes it fun to go in and roll a new character and start from scratch again. So you could really double down on that and do a Season of Mastery that's every 3 months, and it's totally different, and you get to start over and play the same content you enjoy, but in a different way.
Yeah, and that'd be something that they could do to give themselves more breathing room.
Yeah.
If they, instead of immediately popping out the next expansion, if they then at the end of Wrath Classic's life cycle, you could put a Season of Mastery out. Maybe you'd be a Burning Crusade one, and let people go do that for a year, and then after that, maybe you do a Wrath one, and again you start over. You go through and you play up to the Wrath level, and then you put Shadowlands out. I mean, not Shadow. I keep saying Shadowlands when I mean Cataclysm, and it's really annoying. But then you do Cataclysm Classic, and then you could do Cataclysm Classic you could even do Cataclysm Classic as a Season of Mastery instead of putting it out and changing the servers. Because once you change the servers to Cataclysm, you have removed all the stuff that, the stuff people wanted to be able to go and do and see. You've taken it out.
They have to leave some pre-Cataclysm servers. Like right now, we have Classic era servers, which are just vanilla WoW, and we have Wrath servers, which go up to Wrath. And so,
it would be nice if they left those. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think they're definitely going to keep the Classic era servers, and I think if they go into Cataclysm, they have to keep Wrath servers.
Yeah,
I mean, do you remember when we were first writing about that thing, and there was the gear squish, which was a necessary thing, but you remember we went into I think it was the new Deadmines dungeon, and we hit a hard stop on which fight was it? It was the fight with the ogre and the cannons. It was that the ogre boss and the cannons before in the run up to him. The cannons were really hard back then because they did a ton of damage, and everyone's mitigation was in the basement. And then I remember doing that fight, and it was just brutal, just because they'd squish geared so hard, and we hadn't had time to do anything else. We were on characters who were basically just pre-made. So yeah, I think that there's definitely going to have to be, for that matter, if they do the item squish that they're talking about doing during Wrath, if they do the one where they don't have everyone's gear get super inflated by running multiple trials, you could theoretically do Cataclysm without one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways they can approach this. I do think that they can make it work.
Well, so let me pose it this way, like, and here's a question for both of you then real quick, just because I'm kind of curious. Going back to like the original concept or the thought of the ship of Theseus on this, we used to talk about the only thing that could ever hurt WoW would be WoW itself if they created another MMO or whatever. Do we think we've already hit that point? Do we think that vanilla WoW is, or classic WoW is essentially WoW 2.0 now, where it's hitting a point where it's just its own animal, its own beast, its own game? And like we've mentioned that it's wildly popular, and it very clearly is. But is it its own thing now? Is it completely divorced from retail?
Not as long as you have to pay for it or in retail at the same time.
I just mean from a player perspective, right? Like, and the subscription aside, right?
I think they've been very smart to combine the subscription between Classic and retail World of Warcraft, because it means they can continue development on Classic without cannibalizing retail subscriptions by just having it a big combined subscription. It is certainly evolving into its own thing, but I think, the players who want to play Classic and the players who want to play Modern they're different players. I think there's some overlap, but it's like the players who play Modern, they're going to dip their toes into Classic occasionally for the nostalgia or for something different, but they're probably not playing full-time or hardcore. And that may be true of Classic players as well. It's like occasionally, okay, we've run out of content, we'll play a little Modern, and Modern's going to remind us of why we play Classic with all of its different mechanics, and vice versa. Whenever I go into Classic, I'm like, oh, I can't transmog. I have to sit in Orgrimmar and ask for a group over and over. All of those things that are annoyances that retail has fixed and addressed. So yeah, I play retail and I sometimes play Classic, but I just, every time I go in there, I'm like, well, this is why you play Modern WoW.
Yeah, I think in general, what I would say to this is that WoW Classic has a dev team, but it's a much smaller dev team.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things I was thinking about was like, could you ever just have WoW Classic be its own game that had its own content? Like, could you like make your own expansions for it? Could we have completely alternate like patches with alternate stuff in them that we never got before? And I don't think that the numbers are there for like the 2+ years it takes to develop an expansion. And I'm saying 2+ years as if they aren't working on expansions concurrently. But let's go with the 2+ years idea, as opposed to it's really more like 3 or 4, because there's there's work going on before while the current expansion is still working. There's work going on and then work going on beyond that. That 2-year period, if you gave that to the WoW Classic dev team, nothing to do with their talent as developers, purely the manpower and resources they have to bear, it would take them like 5 times as long to get anything done. They just don't have the people. And that's why I think they are always going to be yoked to retail WoW, because they need content. The only place they can actually get it is from retail or previous versions of retail. Like everything, like Wrath Classic, up until Wrath Classic launched, was retail stuff. That's where you could see that content. Now it's back. Now they've got it in its original form again. That's going to be the way forward for WoW Classic, because there just isn't enough impetus there to do otherwise. It just can't become its own thing. It can be a lot different. It's a very different. I do think the what if thing is valid. It's a very different way to experience the game, but it is still basically just. It's like riffing off of original Warcraft. It's like riffing off of World of Warcraft. That's what it is like to me. It's almost like Rift Tracks or Mystery Science Theater, but not trying to be funny. Just give you a different spin on it. Like it's like the Amen Break or the 2009 Star Trek. It is the same thing but different. And I think it will always be the same thing but different. It will never actually be separate enough to be its own game, because it is dependent upon the content pipeline that exists for the other game. That's my take on it.
Okay.
And now I think we're done, because 5 minutes over. Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast site and community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to the podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcast or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Everybody out there, if you could please send us some questions, preferably to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast of Blizzard Watch, so we know it's for this show, because I just can't keep stealing questions from Joe. After a while, it's so ridiculously obvious that that's what I've done. I need a breather from that. If you want to help and you don't want to send an email, you can use our Discord. We've got 2 channels for that. The Patron Q and Podcast Questions channel, which we tend to look in first, and the Q and Podcast Questions channel for non-patrons, because, we still want people who are not patrons to be able to support us by asking us questions and so forth. Thank you guys for being here with us. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast. On behalf of myself, Liz, and Joe, thank you for being here, and we'll be back next week.